Hi, in this video we're going to be giving you a walkthrough and tour of all the options Everest Panel has to offer. Everest Panel is a cutting-edge SHOUTcast and IceCast hosting control panel specifically designed for audio stream hosting providers and broadcasters. So in this video we're going to be focusing mainly on the admin portion or the admin dashboard for Everest Panel. In future videos we're going to be showing you how to get around the broadcaster dashboard, but in this video we're primarily focusing on the admin dashboard. So once we've logged into our dashboard, we're always going to be introduced, or we're always going to see first the home page, where pretty much it shows us a broad general idea of the dashboard itself. Our CPU info down here, our memory usage, disk usage. Up top we have the broadcasters, resellers, our server load and uptime, our load average, and the amount of days our server's been up, our bandwidth usage, and right in the center we're going to have the current listeners in real-time graph. So what this does is basically pretty much sums up all of the stations, all of the listeners, puts it in one number and puts it here. So let's say we have 300 listeners pretty much compared to all the stations. It'll show that here, and then right below it's nice because it'll tell us how the server is behaving with that amount of listeners. So the homepage is always going to be a pretty much general idea of how the server is behaving, CPU wise, memory wise, and disk usage. So to begin pretty much the tour, we're going to go to the first tab here where it says broadcasters. We're going to click on that option and we're going to see three options below it. First one is broadcasters, manage ports, and port range. So first we're going to click on broadcasters, and here it'll show us all of the stations we've got created so far in the dashboard. So in total we have 8 or so here. And the very first top we're going to see client. It'll show us the name, the username of the station, their email, their station name, their status, owner, setup date, show details, and action. So details, what it does is if we click on that, it'll tell us the limit of listeners the station has, their disk quota, and their traffic. So it gives you a little more insight. Let's say we quickly need to know how many listeners, for example, Sam's station has. We just click on show and it'll show us. And then we just click on hide just to hide that one again. And if we click on actions, it'll give us a few options here to log in as this client, the details, edit, suspend, and delete. So we have a couple tools pretty much here, quick tools to be able to delete, edit, or suspend a station if we need to. To add a brand new broadcaster, we would just click on add new here. We enter the name, the station name, the website URL. You basically here you would fill out the information of the station. You create them a password so they can log in, the language, the time zone, the owner. In this case, if you have a reseller, you would assign the reseller's name here, but in this case we have admin because we're the ones creating it. Then we have the template. Templates are pretty neat because it saves us from having to do all of these options right here. So if you see, all of this here is empty, radio stations limits empty, radio channels limits empty. In this case, we have a template created which is called test, that if we click on, automatically assigns the quality, the quota, the traffic per month, listeners limit, everything. So in a few minutes, we're going to be showing you a little more information on how templates work, but it's very recommended that you create 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many you really need, to be able to fasten the process. You can create templates for emails, for resellers, and for broadcasters. It saves you from having to automatically, or manually, I should say, assign these options. In this case, if we always know that this template's going to allow all of the streaming to social media, all of the YouTube and recording and DJ, in that case, you would just create test, you assign that permission, and that way you don't have to do it manually. So once we have that, we're going to click on broadcasters, then we're going to go to manage ports. In the manage ports tab, what we can do is we can actually edit the port for stations. Let's say Sam right now is port 7057 and his SSL port is 6355. If he wanted to change over to, for example, 8500, we would just click on edit. We would assign his regular port 8500, and then the SSL, it can be the as is, or we can change that as well. Our port ranges from 1000 to 99,000. So the possibilities of ports are endless. You can assign whichever one you'd like, and that way you won't have any problem duplicating the ports if need be. We're going to click on broadcast, and then we're just going to click on port range. So port range basically lets us edit the automatic. For example, let's say we have a stations automatic set up with WHMS, or whichever way where a client pays, automatically creates the station. What you can do here is you just set up the ports you like so that you don't have to manually assign a port, or it'll randomly put, for example, 2547. You can just say, hey, Everest Panel, I want the ports to be from 7000 to 899, and then SSL Mini, I want the ports from SSL to be 5000 to 6999. So that way we can edit pretty much the ports that we want to use for brand new stations. So once we're done with broadcasters, we're just going to click on this icon one more time, and then we're going to go to the resellers tab. So currently we don't have any resellers, but pretty much resellers are people that can have their own stations. They can create their own stations. They can basically be the owner of those stations. So we would just click on add new. You would give the reseller a username, their company name, their website URL. You would fill out this information for them, and then template, like I had mentioned, you can create a template for resellers that allows them to pretty much be able to create certain amount of stations. In this case, It's 0 for unlimited, but you can assign, let's say I only want this reseller to be able to create 10 stations, so that's all his plan includes. You would just enter 10 here, listeners limit, maximum bit rate, and then disk quota, and then if you'd like him to start streaming. So you can do this either manually or you can create a template. So it's pretty much like I had mentioned, recommended to create a template just to make this a little easier. It fastens the process, so you don't have to sit here and manually assign it. If you already know this reseller the plan, you click on template, you assign the new template plan for the reseller, and you're all set. Then once we're done here, we're just going to go to URL branding. URL branding allows us to assign a domain to Everest Panel. So right now our domain is mydemo.everestpanel.com. But let's say our domain was everestpanelstreaming.com, then we would just assign that here, and that way we don't have the IP public. So in case you don't have a domain, you can just pretty much assign this IP here, and that would be your login. But for the most time, it looks a little more professional. It looks a lot nicer to have a domain. So in this case, we have mydemo.everestpanel.com, and up here it says must point your domain or subdomain to server IP before adding it. So it's very important to do this task before adding the domain here. Once you're all set, you would just add it, you click on update, and that's saved. So now we're going to go to the settings tab, and here we're going to see 4 options. So the very first one is going to be my profile. We're going to click on that, and it's going to allow us to change our icon here, the one that we see at the top right. So the cool thing is we can actually assign one for broadcasters, resellers, and admins. So pretty much all of these 3 users can change their own icons, and broadcasters as well. The stations we created at the very top, the first 8, once they log into their client portal, they can pretty much change their icon just to make it a little more customizable. Stations like they put their own logo, or you can change it to a microphone, whatever you'd like, you can change that here. Then you can also assign your email, and you can reset your password by entering your old one and then the new one, and then just clicking reset password. Now the second option under settings is system. We're going to click on that, and it basically allows us to change the top left here, the logo Everest Panel. It's recommended size of 200 by 50. We recommend using a PNG icon or a PNG logo so you don't have that background and it's just transparent, so it looks a lot nicer. Then the company icon would be the top one right here in the browser. It's a little icon up here. You can replace that to your own. You can assign a microphone or your logo if you have the size. You can assign it. We recommend also, like I mentioned, PNG, so you have clear transparency and there's no background. Right below, it's just our company name. You can replace the company name to whatever you'd like. And then the time zone. The time zone would change the hour up here, where it says UTC 4:55. You can manage all of that. You can change that from right there. Now under SMTP, we're just going to click on that, and this basically allows us to connect our email server, so that way we can send clients emails. For example, let's say a client's passed their disk quota, or their account is suspended because they've passed the amount of listeners, or the payment date. You can manage all of this here. You can connect your server, your port, your username and password, and that way you can connect and send them emails. In template, we have a couple of test emails I'll show you now in the next few minutes. Then API setting is just an API token here that we can connect to whatever tool we'd like. If we'd like notifications, player, anything that you require the API token for, you can find that under API setting, and then you just click copy, and if you need to regenerate it, you can regenerate it using this button right here. Then we're going to click on backup, and backup is pretty much a tool that we have that Everest Panel offers that allows you to backup stations so you don't lose any data. So we have backup config is the very first option. It allows us to do a local backup config or remote backup. In this case, we just click enable or disable, and we can assign either daily or weekly backup. Up here it says alert, local backup and remote backup start at 2 a.m. every day for daily backup and 2 a.m. every Sunday for weekly backup. Remote backup option is supported in only rsync and SSH. So if we click on remote config or remote backup config, we can actually set up our host, our port, user, password, and the destination of where we like. In this case, /root/backup. And that way we can do a remote backup weekly or daily to the server, so you have no trouble. In case anything happens to your data, you can just do a restore backup, and that way you're all set with your data and it's not lost. Backup status right below backup config just lets us know how our backups are doing, scheduling, if they're going fine. In this case, we have it disabled in the demo server, so it currently says disabled. Then we have manually backup, which lets us pretty much select the stations we like. Let's say we don't want to back up all of the stations, just a couple of them. We would assign, let's say we want to do, for example, the e-test. We would just click on that one, and then we'll see that we're backing up 568 megabytes of data. In that case, once we're all set, we would just click backup and begin the backup process. And we can see up here where it says manually backup is a full backup copy for broadcast or account in compression file under this location. So as you see here, this backup of this station will be under home evp username.tar.gz. Then restore backup basically just lets us see and restore backups that are remotely, manual, or local. This would be pretty much to restore the backup. So that would be the backup section in Everest Panel. Then we have the migration tool. Migration tool is pretty neat because it allows us to transfer stations from Everest Panel, EverestCast Pro, Sintova, Sonic Panel, AzureCast Media CP. It lets us transfer stations with only needing the host, port, username, and password. It helps us transfer over the content from those stations over here and makes the transfer process a breeze. So up here we have migration status. It pretty much just allows us to see how the migrations are going, if they're successful, and the status of them. Then we have templates. Templates is the very important thing that I had mentioned below, or above, sorry, when we were talking about broadcasters and resellers and SMTP. Then we click on email templates. Here you'll see we have a couple demo templates already created. We have the reset password, disk quota limit exceeded, service suspended. All of these are emails you can send out once you set up under settings, the SMTP option, you've connected your server, and that way you can send these emails out. For broadcasters, you have the templates to be able to, like I had mentioned, assign them. For example, where if you only want this broadcaster here, the template, to have the option to create only, let's say 15 stations. You would assign 15 stations, and you only want this template to allow people to use YouTube streaming. You would assign that, you would give it a name, and then you would click add new. And then when you go back to broadcasters above, you'll pretty much be able to assign this new template that you added to those stations, so that way you have no problem pretty much setting that up and assigning a template that you would like. The same process would be for resellers. You can assign a reseller template. If you click on add new, you can assign them, hey, I only want this reseller to have the station limit of 30. You would assign him 30, and that reseller can only add 30, and then once he reaches with 30 stations, he would no longer be able to create new ones until he either lets you know or deletes some other ones. So the templates tool is very nice because it pretty much fastens the process. It makes everything just a lot easier to pretty much be able to automate the process. You create the station really quickly, you give them a username, you select the template, and all done and all set. Then once we're done with the templates tab, we're going to click on System Info. And System Info is pretty much a much more detailed view of the server. Our software info, our CPU info, uptime, RAM, disk space, host, and server root storage. So pretty much if we go back to dashboard, on the home page, we have a few options that make it just a little easier, a little faster. But if you want a more detailed, more viewed, you want to know exactly how everything is doing, you would just go to System Info, and you can find that information here. We click on CPU info. It'll just give us information on our server, just more detailed. Then license tab basically just goes into our license and what we can and what we have offered currently in our license. If you ever need to update your license, you just replace this text with a new one and update. And logs pretty much just show us add login logs and API logs. So login logs will basically show us people logging into the server, their IP, their country, their information. And API logs, once we have that set up, it'll also show you the same thing, IP, country, things like that. Version and update is basically just letting us know that we have the latest version, no update available. Your version 1.1.2 is stable and is the latest version. So when there's a new update available and they promote it on Facebook and things like that, it'll show up here. It'll show you the bug fixes, the new features, and then it'll show you a button to click on update, and that way we can have the latest version of Everest Panel. Lastly, the last option here on the dashboard is Get Support, which automatically opens up the ticket tab in Everest Panel to contact the team in case you have any questions. So this was basically your first video on how to customize the dashboard and how to get more interested and pretty much have a better idea of how the tools work and things like that and where each and every one of them is. So one last thing I wanted to mention as well is in case you wanted to change the language, we have a little flag icon here. You click on it and you can assign different languages, and that way you can get to work on your language if you need to of the Everest Panel dashboard. And up here we click on admin. We can just either log out, click my profile, and replace our profile image, our email, or reset password. It's just a little faster way to get here. Instead of clicking settings in my profile, you can just click on your icon above. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this video helped. If you have any questions, feel free to reach us out at everestpanel.com. We'll be happy to help. Have a great day.